What's going on, everyone? I'm John.
I'm Dennison.
And this is The Catch Up. Alright, man, so here's what's been going on with me. First of all, we talked last week. I was doing the Bumble thing.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say, man, I am calling it quits on that already. Like, I was a short timer, man, but it's already gotten to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to say no to this. That's a no for me, dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
I just think, like, you hear people say, like, it's not for everybody. You hear all those people like, oh, well, it works for some people, it works for others. So, like, we talked about it. It's worked for you off and on. And I'm glad. Like, I'm really happy about that. It works for my brother, too. But, man, like, I don't know. I just, what I did? Like, I ended up finding myself, and maybe it was partly because of the timing of when I did it. But I found myself just like, oh, did anybody swipe right on me? Is there something wrong with my profile? Is something wrong with, like, me? Like, what's going on? Like, just thinking way too much about it. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, it shouldn't be about that. It should just be about, hey, like, have a good time, meet people, like this and that. And I was like, man, this one little app is putting way too much pressure on me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of had to learn how to do that because I fell into those same traps that you did.
Yeah.
So you have to change your mindset in some ways so that way you don't think about it too much.
That's true. At the same time, I happen to have some people that I'm close to, in the real world, not the non-virtual world, that I've been spending some time with lately too. So it's kind of panned out altogether. But man, I don't know. I just think maybe I'll come back to it at some point. Who knows? You never know what the future might hold. But I was just like, yeah, it's kind of like, when you promote stuff, because like we've been promoting this podcast on our Facebook pages, and we've been talking about other ways to do that, obviously, like you said the other day, we should probably do our own Facebook page for this, and then get the listeners to head over there and like and subscribe and all that. But it's kind of like when you're like promoting your content and your stuff on Facebook, and you're like wondering, okay, so did I not get enough clicks because people just didn't see it, or because they just don't care? And then at the end of the day, you just gotta be like, well, I'm gonna just do me. They'll get on to it eventually, So it feels like kind of the same thing to me.
Yeah, it pretty much is the same thing.
Right.
I mean, you have to realize that, not everyone's going to like you, and sometimes that's okay. I mean, as long as you be who you are, it doesn't really matter that much on whether someone swiped right or left or whatever like that. So I feel like as long as you come at online dating at that kind of capacity, and as long as you continue to remember that you need to still be genuine, because just because, some other person didn't swipe on you or whatever, that doesn't mean that you should try and like shield yourself
Right.
from them. I mean, you're still trying to get to know people. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is true with everything. And like with this project, this podcast that we're doing, we're just trying to be genuine. And I mean, I admit, well, of course you got to listen to other sources for inspiration, And so we've tried new things every week. We've made tweaks to it. And eventually I'm sure we'll just settle into a zone where we just go. But like in the midst of all that, we've wanted to keep it, true to us and true to who we are. You don't want people tuning in and being like, wait, is this John Dennison? I thought I knew these fools, I thought they were the fools that would be like walking through Home Goods, like singing way too loud.
Singing some Michael Jackson.
Of course, bro. So on and so forth. So anyway, but yeah, so I mean I've been doing that and just the usual. Same old, same old. Been working on music, and that's another thing that's gonna be coming out soon. I this week's been busy for me, so I haven't really been able to work on it as much as I want, but you've been a part in that. You've been kind of the ears, the person I can bounce stuff off of as I send it to Devon. And sometimes Devon. All right. So for people that don't know, Denson knows what I'm gonna say. Devon is like one of those people that says he has said to us in all sincerity, I'm always available. You just have to catch me at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's his catchphrase.
Right. And does that make sense? No, not to anyone but Devon, bro. So I'm like, man, so in between that, because obviously I'm sending him the stuff and he's messing around with it and seeing what he can do with it. But in between that, you've been the ears to bounce stuff off of. And so eventually, we want to make a home for all this stuff. And so, yeah, we'll have a separate Facebook profile for the Catch Up podcast. And then we'll have separate for music. And then it'll all be on one website where you can link to it all. But in the meantime, remember, gotta say this, like, rate, review, subscribe, all that stuff, wherever you're listening to this on. As we put out, so at this time, the second episode's live right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first one, the views or the listens, the plays have gone way up. More people are listening to the first episode than they are the second. And I think it's just because they're catching on. They're like, oh, well, let me start from the beginning, which is cool,
Mm-hmm.
So thanks to everybody for that. Shout out to all y'all. But make sure you subscribe and you'll get all the new episodes as we do them. Every Monday. Yeah.
Every Monday.
Anyway, that's right. So anyway, that's what's been going on with me, man. But tell me what's been going on in your life.
For me, it's been pretty chill. For the most part, I've just been doing my own thing, going back and doing some classes, getting myself back into the swing of things of learning again in some ways. You're always learning, but it's different when you're trying to do it in a class setting. Even though it's an online class, it's more of it's a different experience. So I'm kind of getting myself back in that mood, and just kind of working on building myself up, as well as doing a little bit of the online dating. But for the most part, I'm trying to make sure that I continue to improve myself, and also just improve all aspects of my life.
Yeah, well, that's good. I've been kind of missing school lately too. I gotta tell you, man. There's something about it.
Yeah, I mean, school, for me at least, I guess I never really did great in the whole classroom setting, but I kind of got used to it. I'm more of a hands-on learner, so classrooms don't really work that well for me. I mean, when I did my certification classes, those were a lot better because those are very hands-on. So they're very much something like, you learn something, you learn it out of the book or whatever like that. And then you get to use that as a real world application. And I really enjoyed that. And most classes don't have that type of deal. So I kind of have to relearn getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah. Well, a lot of programs don't have that availability either, so it's, I mean, to be in a field where you can learn, but get hands-on experience too. And that just benefits you further down the line. I mean, I know, we're a couple of guys that are still, young enough to where we're trying to substantiate ourselves and get our feet firmly planted in our careers to
for sure.
Just take off, And so anytime that you can go back to your workplace or to another workplace and say, hey, I now have this experience, it just makes you that much more valuable, man.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to add value to myself so that everyone else, so I'm able to help, the company that I'm at right now. And then at the same time, I'm able to just, get better and help others whenever I get moved to a different company or just help my career. I mean, there's a lot of good things that can come from it. And I also think it teaches me like a little bit of humility, because I get to remember that I don't know everything. There's still so much more that I need to learn. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, and the thing is too, like none of us know everything, you know? I mean, we
Mhm.
all have, there's just so much for us to figure out. Um, in our own fields, I mean, I'm not talking about meaning of life type stuff, but just in our own lives. And I have to say, man, like in these 4 episodes that we've done this, like I was not in a good place um when we started it versus where I am now.
Mhm.
And what a good time in our lives, this point of our lives is, where I just think mid-20s is a blessing, but there's positives to like every point of your life. You just got to look for it. But like right now, we're getting to try new things and have fun and kind of get our feet wet and dip our toes into this, and this. We're figuring out who we are. We're growing as people. And I got into this kind of come up a couple of years back. Again, like we've talked about being YouTube fans and stuff. I found myself drawn towards the guys that were gym oriented because I still am into that, but I really needed the gym advice at the time, especially. um, like bad. I wasn't making no gains, but anyway, um, and I was drawn towards the people that were like all about self enhancement or so that's probably the wrong terminology, self
Yeah, sounds
improvement.
a little weird.
I ain't trying to do a drug company advertisement right now, but anyway, self improvement. Um, and yeah, so just bettering yourself and how rewarding that is to be able to look back and like, this is where I started at, here's where I am now, but at the same time always being hungry for more. I think that's something that you and I both kind of fall into.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, always strive to learn, always strive to grow.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of YouTube, I wanted to give an update on that real quick before we jump into our topics here, man. So I found this out the other day. I'm not even 100% sure if it's legit because I haven't seen it yet, like show up in my bank account. But anyway, we talked about the YouTube outage on the last episode that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And I find out basically because, working in news and working overnight in news, you see all these overnight news programs. And it was just one really quick segment on one of them talking about, YouTube is offering partial refunds for your monthly bill because of this outage. And I was like, wait, what? So I had
That's
to,
cool.
yeah, but I mean, do you think they made that readily available? Like, of course not. So I had to Google search it and then find an article, and like USA Today was the article I clicked on. So I go to that, and I scroll down, I click on the link. It's a Google link. I know for sure because it had my user profile pop up in the right corner. And I'm like, all right. So I just put my email in and they go, we'll be contacting you shortly. I haven't heard anything from them. I haven't heard anything, but basically it's about YouTube TV is about $40 a month. They said they'll give you like 10% off. So it's like 25% off, which is cool. I mean, they didn't even have to do that because, like we talked about, the adage was only like an hour and a half.
About that much.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty cool thing for a company like them to do to earn trust with their viewers. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not something that every company does, so it is very nice that they did that.
Right. Yeah. No, I know. And especially a company as large as Google. And I'll tell you what, at least up here, at least in Wichita, the way they are taking off with the customer base is impressive. It's impressive. Everyone my age, our age, knows about YouTube TV, knows what, that's available and like what it does and all that stuff. Versus, AT&T with their DirecTV Now program. I don't think a lot of people know that exists. They haven't done a great job at marketing it. And meanwhile, you have YouTube TV, like they're the primary sponsor for the World Series, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say I think it's very regional based, because I do know a lot of people who know about DirecTV Now in my area, but I mean, really? AT&T is kind of big in the Dallas area, so maybe that's kind of why.
Could be. I mean, they are widely based down there. And then, at the same time, like they obviously have a big sponsorship role of the NCAA tournament, basketball tournament, March Madness. And so, maybe that comes around. You start seeing all these DirecTV Now ads instead of YouTube TV. But yeah, man. So anyway, I was happy about that. Free money is always good money. So I'm not going to complain about that for sure. So anyway, so that's what's been going on, man. But yeah, let's take a quick break. We'll come right back and we'll jump into these topics.
Perfect. So, I was thinking about talking about the state of 5G, because, that's becoming a bigger and bigger topic as time goes on.
It is.
So, I mean, 5G, to those who don't know about it, it's talking about our cellular network. So, how right now we already have 4G. And really the 4G and the 5G really just means fourth generation is 4G, and then fifth generation is 5G or whatever like that.
Okay, so it doesn't have any technical specifications. It's not like 5 gigawatts of data or something like that.
No, not in the name.
Yeah.
It does make big advancements, but it's not like, like you were saying, it's not like 5 gigabit or whatever like that.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So 5G, what's really cool about 5G is just the potential that it has for us. So currently 4G, the speeds for that goes from about 4 megabits per second to about 12 megabits per second. And if you were to think of that in terms of like your home network, if you had like 4 big gigabits, not gigabits, sorry, megabits. I should really change that. So it's 4 megabits per second to up to 4 or up to 12 megabits per second. It's all megabits. So we're not talking about bytes. It's not a megabyte, it's a megabit. Yeah, so it's actually smaller than what you would think.
Right. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you do your home internet, most people see the speeds and think of it as like, oh, I'm getting 12 megabytes per second.
I know.
But it's actually megabits.
Yeah, so then they get frustrated when they download something. It's like, wait, shouldn't this download speed be going 12 megabytes per second? I downloaded a 48 megabyte movie and it should be downloaded in 4 seconds. Like, how is my math possibly off on this?
It's because megabytes are insanely small. I think 12 megabits is like converts to like 1 megabit or 1 megabit or sorry, gosh darn.
No, yeah, I think you're right. 12 megabits equals 1 megabyte.
Yeah, 1 megabyte, exactly, which is really trash.
Yeah, no, it is. And so what you're saying is, 4G network is like having a 12 megabit per second home Wi-Fi. Does that so when you say 4G, are you talking about 4G LTE, right? Yeah, because I know no one else knows this, but man, so not like iPhone 4G when you you called that the 3.5G, man. Because that technically was the network. Like people thought, oh man, I got a 4G iPhone. No, you got a 3G that's like slightly upgraded. And it wasn't true 4G until that LTE little thing came up here. So man, once again, they are the masters of marketing, man.
Yeah, they really are. They understand the market and they're using it to their advantage.
Right, because really, if you round up 3.5, that equals 4. So it technically counts. But anyway, go ahead.
I guess. So all I was going to say is that 5G is a lot better. So that actually, it's predicted to go up from, it'll be, at least first iterations, will be about 50 megabits per second to up to about 100 megabits. Now, different companies are actually saying different intervals or whatever like that. I think preliminary is probably going to start around there. But I think as it advances, a lot of them are saying it's going to start at 100 megabits per second, which is a lot. I think that equals around about 19 or 18 megabits per second, or sorry, megabytes per second. So a lot of them are saying it'll start at about 100 megabits per second and go all the way up to like either 450 megabits per second to a gigabit, which is a huge leap.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I've seen articles about this. I meant to read one the other day because I follow CNET and they do a great job keeping up with technology stuff.
They really do.
So I can't say I read the articles because that'd be a lie. But so I was your typical millennial getting the whole story from just the headline. But what it seemed like to me was they were talking about the development of 5G keeps improving beyond what they initially intended, like what you're saying. Exactly. And then it'll be here even faster than we expected as well. I know they're already starting to roll it out in a couple of places, and Dallas is one of those places that's going to be first to get 5G.
If I'm not mistaken, Verizon has actually already launched a campaign to do a little bit of a 5G test for people in their own homes. So it would be upgrading their home Wi-Fi up to about, I think it's small amount, but it ups it up to 5 gigabit speeds.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that is what we talked about a couple weeks ago. And how you're putting it, that makes a lot more sense based on what I said, which made no sense. And that's why whenever we talk about technology, you lead the discussion on this podcast. Because the thing is that you're still gonna have your Wi-Fi router. But it's going to be it's like a 5G. It's going to run on the 5G network. And so like with Verizon, they're going to have, so places like Wichita are not going to get this for a while, basically is what this means. But they're going to set up their 5G network and eventually they'll phase out the 3G, they phased out the Edge not too long ago. They may have already phased out the 3G. I can't remember. Do you know?
If I'm not mistaken, it's still there. It's just considered like Edge, pretty much.
Yeah, the Edge network is what you had on your original iPhones. You'd have that little E up at the top. That was the Edge network. So that was the original like wireless internet service. But anyway, so now they'll have 5G service, and the same 5G that you get on your phone or whatever eventually will be routed through your Wi-Fi router and, harnessed, so to speak, and then give you those incredible data speeds.
Exactly. I know right now some of the delays for 5G are mainly dealing with phones and other technologies. So right now, the market is semi-ready for it. A lot of companies have actually delayed their deployments because they're waiting for 5G capable phones to be introduced. I think early next year is when we'll start seeing a lot of those 5G phones. It'll probably be in the first iteration of phones, yes.
Already? Who's going to be the first one to jump on that?
I've been getting reports that it's going to be Samsung with their newest flagship. It'll be the Galaxy S10, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of people are saying that that's going to be the first 5G capable phone. Okay.
Man, I gotta tell you, man, don't tell anybody this. But I messed with my friend Kevin's Samsung Wait, what does he have? Yeah, he has a Samsung. I was impressed, man. I was like, this is a nice phone right here. This is a clean phone.
They're very nice.
But yeah, I mean, it was either going to be Samsung or Apple, to jump on it first. And everybody has, like, LG's really come up with their game. Google's new phone looks incredible. But, Samsung and Apple are going to work to contain that market dominance,
Mm-hmm. So technically, if you want to be fully technical, Motorola is actually the first company that started the whole 5G deal, because they have their Moto X series, which is their modular phones or whatever like that. So they actually created a 5G pack that you can attach to your phone and technically get 5G.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. So any phone at that point could be 5G capable.
If it's a Moto Z, part of the Motorola's phones.
Man. Yeah. Well, that's smart for them, because then they can just take longer to develop their own 5G capable phone, and you can just work with that pack, and then, and then eventually you want the 5G phone. Because, man, I'll tell you what, this is what I wanted to ask you about on this topic. The capabilities that we're going to have with 5G, I don't think people are ready for it, man. Because they don't know, because it's hard to understand. But, talk about that a little bit. Like, what do you think is going to really come from 5G being implemented outside of faster download speeds,
Well, it allows us to do a lot more mobile things. I guess a lot of people don't understand that 5G isn't just for your mobile phone. It actually be for anything. I mean, we already have laptops that are capable of having SIM cards, so that way you can actually get like 4G networks or whatever like that. But it also frees up a lot of other things. I mean, this makes it to where you can kind of have almost internet everywhere, and it'll be at insanely fast speeds, normal speeds that you could only get from like a wired connection. You're getting through the air, which is an amazing concept. So a lot of times this will help, say, the medical field. This can help a lot of, if they need to have like a pop-up tent for medical procedures or anything like that, you can always, and they require networks, you can pop up somewhere as long as you have power and you have like a 5G adapter or whatever like that to a laptop or computer or whatever. You'll be able to stream multiple things, back to like a home base or whatever like that, and be able to do so many different procedures or whatever like that. There's just a lot of capabilities, and technically, like home services. So say like your cable or whatever like that. I mean, we already have, like you were saying about YouTube TV and stuff like that. Well, technically, you'd be able to move everything to a wireless deal, without having any sorts of, what's it called? any sort of
wire
help me out
line,
here.
you know, like cable, like any sort of connection. It could all be wireless, right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I mean, yeah. So the thing on that, I mean, it's just kind of what I was kind of thinking about in regards to what you can do, what you will be able to do with this is, yeah, you can have TVs, you can have your smart TVs, and you know your over what they're called over the top streaming services, and this and that, which many of us already do. But it'll be what this is going to allow for is something called the Internet of Things, you know, and um and also augmented reality. And when I say like augmented reality, I'm not talking like you have to wear goggles, right, to see this stuff. Like, no, like I'm talking about actual, and in some cases, yes, you do.
Real time streaming.
Yes, but real time streaming, like I'm talking like you see on like Star Trek where they grab something, right? Or any science fiction movie, they grab something on some screen and pop it up in like kind of a hologram projection type of thing. I don't know, just stuff like that, stuff from the digital world mixed with the real world. That's what augmented reality is.
Yeah.
It's going to open the door for that. And then the Internet of Things, again, we've already kind of dabbled in that with, like, again, your Amazon Alexa, like we've talked about before. That can talk to everything that is, what they call it, smart home equipped. And so that is like an entry level to what the Internet of Things is. Eventually, you're gonna walk into your house, and your house is going to recognize you based off of your physical description and voice mannerisms, and then it will apply your settings that you have preset. So like you want these lights on, you want, like, right when you walk in the door, you want the thermostat at this temperature and these lights on and the TV set to this channel or whatever have you. Turn the microwave on now. All that. That is the Internet of Things, and that is what will be able to be done with this 5G technology, because they will have the capability and the data speeds to be able to talk to all this stuff. So it's a long-winded, like really nerdy way of explaining how crazy the future is going to be, and I'm talking the near future.
Exactly. I mean, it opens up the doorway to everything. Like you said, the Internet of Things is something that we already have, but like you said, it'll speed things up exponentially. This will also help usher in the era of artificial intelligence dealing with unfortunately and fortunately at the same time.
Yeah, there's going to be good that comes from it, but you know, we've all seen iRobot. I ain't trying to be Will Smith in iRobot, man.
I mean, I'm thinking, yes, you do have that, but this can also help dealing with like healthcare robots. So robots that are going to take care of the elderly and stuff like that, that'll help them out a lot, because they'll be able to stream like lifetime, a real-time data from, say, like their doctors or whatever like that, and say, hey, okay, you need to change this type of prescription. And they'll be able to monitor their patients or the people who they're taking care of a lot more effectively,
yes,
without any lag or any latency or stuff like that. It'll also help for self-driving cars.
Yes,
they'll be able to have. Yeah, so they'll be able to have real-time updated data on like roads, driving conditions. I mean, of course, they already have cameras, but when you already know the route and you know what to expect, it helps them become even more advanced and be able to predict things even better than they already can.
Yeah, and so the cars will like literally be able to talk to them or talk to each other. Like
exactly,
not like physically, like, hey, yo, what up, car? Like, but it'll be like, this car up here is traveling at this mile per hour. Now it is stopping because of a hazard in the road. So I too am going to stop, and that will all be real time, instantaneous, and reactionary. You know, but at the same time, what I've seen that will lead to down the road, pardon the pun, but it will lead to like that Jetsons type of traffic that you see, like on the cartoons where everything's just a perfect flow. Like there's never any traffic backup because everything will be connected to a network where it's always constantly talking to each other, and there'll be this free flow, for the most part, down interstates to get to your destination even faster than before. So no more long commute times is the idea with that.
Exactly. No more traffic. When everything's talking to each other, there aren't any issues.
Right. Well, man, I'll tell you what, it interests me. And we've already talked about our worries with AI. We talked about that on the very first episode, man. And so, but there's a lot of good, like you said, that can and will come from it. And as long as, I think it's just like with anything else, any other technological advancement we've had, as long as it is in the right hands, we're good to go,
Mm-hmm.
So
as long as we make sure that we do things properly and follow the right procedures and don't get over zealous or super greedy or whatever like that.
Right. Show restraint, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Things will go in the right way.
Exactly. So, man, it's a lot of interesting stuff going to come from 5G. I'll tell you what, we're going to take one more break here. We're going to take a couple more breaks, but we're going to take one right now. And we'll come back and we'll hit y'all with another topic, man. I want to talk about violence, and I know it sounds ridiculous. A little weird. Yeah, I mean, it's a word we've heard a lot of lately, though, man. And there's a reason for that. I mean, there's a lot of violence going on in the world. As we're recording this, we're recording this a little later in the week than we usually do. On this day, there was a mass shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh, and so they're still getting the details out on that. But I work in the news, and I guess the focus is not so much on violence itself, but what's been surrounding the violence. So here's what I mean, okay? So all last week there was like these scares of bombings, package bombings, like pipe bombs in packages, and they were sent to all these elected officials that were Democrat or liberal, or anyone of note that's spoken out against the president. So one was the former director of national intelligence who spoke out against the president when he disagreed with intelligence officials about Russian hacking of the election. Another one was Robert De Niro, who earlier this year said something like "F you, Donald Trump" or something like that on national television. And so, but there was also CNN, and so that one kind of hits close to home, right? Because, I work in the news. So yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Man, I don't know. I just couldn't imagine being in that situation. I watched the coverage that they had when they received that stuff and, or the package, and they had to evacuate their building, and they still went and still performed amazing. Like outside on the phone, they're using their phones as microphones. Okay. And they're dialed in somewhere, who knows, but they were like using that to record or not record, but broadcast. So yeah, man, in regards to like CNN, there's been kind of this, I mean, obviously there's a prevailing thought for a lot of people right now, fake news this, fake news that. And there's no denying you're going to have your outliers. You're going to have your outliers in news and in anything really. I mean, that's my thing is like one bad apple spoils a whole bunch in the industry that I work in. And of course, like, we should hold ourselves to high standards as journalists. I'm not making an excuse for anybody who reports non-factual information or anything like that. But it does seem to me that amongst a certain group of people, there was a blame laid on the media for the state of our country, for this kind of hateful mindset that seems to be obviously not in the majority, but enough of a group that they're taking action. They're doing something about it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I will say, just coming from more like an outsider's perspective, I feel like the fake news thing is somewhat alarming. I do understand that is still a thing that does happen, but as you said, it's sometimes it's really just the outliers, and it's the silent majority is perfectly fine, but it's when you have, the loud minority is where you get these issues and stuff like that. But where I was trying to go with this is, I think that fake news is a big problem, and it can be a thing that can get really bad. But I think when people are throwing the blame on realistic news stories as being fake news, it turns into a point to where you make your viewers, your listeners, have a hard time distinguishing what's real and what's not. And I feel like that's becoming more and more of a thing that's going to cause a lot more problems down the road.
Exactly.
To be honest, it kind of reminds me of some of the propaganda that actually goes through in Russia. Strangely enough, they have a very big propaganda problem. And the worst part is, a lot of their people even know that some of the stuff is just, fake news, straight fake news. But it's just something that it's so ingrained in how they do things and stuff like that's just become that way. And I'm actually scared that it can get to that point. So I will say, I will hold my news reporters in a very, very high regard, because I don't want that to happen.
Sure. No, you don't. And again, I mean, there's no place for it. But I think, in this world where we have these attacks going on, and like in this case, it was a guy who believed what he was hearing, seeing, reading, from the news organizations he chose to align himself with, that these people are evil people, and in his mind, they needed to be taken off the face of the earth. And
which is unacceptable at any rate.
In a sense, so I can see how people could blame the media for that, but there's a difference here. I think fake news, I think the terminology is thrown around way too often. I want to be clear. I'm not even talking about the president. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about how fake news is thrown around as a terminology that doesn't even have to do with whether the news is fake or not. Because we as a country have gotten into this comfort zone, if you will, of like, well, okay, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, whatever. I'm going to watch Fox News, or I am a Democrat, or a liberal, or whatever. So I'm going to watch MSNBC, for example. And because they say things I agree with, and all you're doing at that point is enforcing your already held beliefs rather than expanding your knowledge and seeing it from the other side. I think that, but here's the thing: people go to that stuff and think that a roundtable discussion on what the president did on Halloween is like is news. It's not news. It's called punditry, and it's basically an opinion forum for people to discuss what their opinions are. And so to really just label it all in one lump sum, I mean, that's not fair at all. And I don't think people really convey that same sentiment for local journalism, but they do. I can tell you, because we get emails at the station I work at all the time from people saying, "Hey, fake news this, fake news that." The president came to Topeka to campaign for one of our governor candidates. We showed that, covered it in full, all this stuff. A couple days later, there's a Democrat meeting in downtown Wichita where they have a large number of people, and they're talking about, getting out the vote and how you can sway the trajectory of our country if you actually go out and vote and all this. And people are writing in, calling in, complaining that we as the so-called fake news media would give so much airtime to the liberal Democrats, and it just shows how the liberal news media is controlling society and making people think a certain way. That we did 10 times the amount of coverage when the president of the United States came to our state. And by the way, Topeka is not even in the Wichita viewing area. Okay. So, but we still went out of our way to do blowout coverage of that because it's the president. And so, no, I mean, there's this, if anything stokes this fire, in my point of view, it is the mudslinging from both sides saying the fake news is saying this, fake news is that, and the the majority of the media is just in the middle. It's kind of like when you have that divorce argument, and the kids are the ones left in the middle, the innocent bystanders.
Yeah. In some ways, right now, we're in this weird political climate that both sides are cannibalizing themselves and both fighting amongst each other. And I feel like that is causing more problems for the media because it's hard for them to be non-biased and make sure that both sides are represented properly, but at the same time, make sure that you don't, step on anyone's toes. I mean, because when you have both sides firing at each other, nonstop, it's really hard to just make sure that you do things right without one side or the other side getting mad at you.
Yeah.
So I will say the media is in a really, really hard spot right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so once again, and they always are in a hard spot, and it should be. The job of the media is to hold people accountable, whether that's elected officials or whatever have you. And it says that in the Constitution. But, at the same time, those people have every right to try and hold the media accountable. My thing is this. I just took it personally when the media lumped into one large group was blamed or was, blamed for these attacks on these elected officials and these, these pipe bombs that were being mailed to them. That is just not the way it should go. And I'll tell you, I think that really speaks to societal issues that you can't really pinpoint. But the thing is like when that starts happening, that is really like 12-year-old childish stuff. As you can tell, I'm kind of fired up about this. I mean, you get people saying, well, it's really this group's fault, or it's really, really this group is the reason this happened. Well, why don't we not talk about who's to blame and figure out why this is happening and how to stop it?
Hmm. I mean, I feel like we as humans always don't. It's so easier for us to blame someone else instead of taking responsibility for our own problems. So I can completely understand why it's a gosh darn. While we're having a hard time understanding, like, hey, what can we do to actually fix these issues? I mean, it deals with, and this is just something that we as a society need to understand is that we need to take a lot of these problems that we're having more seriously instead of just finding a side, like you said, finding a side to blame.
Yeah.
Uh, there are people who are having real mental health issues. And we're just kind of blaming it on someone else instead of actually trying to help them and trying to figure out, hey, how can we stop these people from, getting into this situation in the first place?
Exactly.
I mean, that's why like a lot of mass shootings seem to be coming up more. It's because I feel like we put such a big stigma on mental health issues without actually trying to find a solution to help people who have mental health issues or mental health issues.
Yeah, this goes back to a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago about mental health, and it should be more in the national conversation, but at the same time, when it comes to these tragic events, and they say, "Oh, well, he or she has mental health issues," it's like oh, okay. It's not like, well, what can we do to fix this or make a difference so these type of incidents stop happening. It's almost like it's taken as, all right, well, they have mental health issues. Well, that explains that. What are you going to do? And
exactly.
And no, no. So yeah, it's that aspect is absolutely swept under the rug. But man, I'm not trying to take up too much time with this. I just wanted to voice this because it really has been bothering me all week. We've been covering these things, and of course, CNN was one of the air quote victims of this alleged attack, and so it just, I don't know. I don't think it's right to victimize, but at the same time, it's not right to accuse others of wrongdoing and just start mudslinging. I think it sets a bad precedent for our society. That's why I brought it up. And that's really the main reason I wanted to talk about it, man. It has nothing to do with politics. It just is something that I see our society becoming more and more comfortable with, of just blaming people left and right rather than actually solving the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, I'll get off my soapbox for now. But hey, we're going to take another quick break. We'll come back with another topic. And we'll hit y'all with that here in a minute. All right, so there's this band called Greta Van Fleet, right? And they're like a newer band. I'll tell you what, man. They are getting, well, I'm not going to say great reviews because they're not, and that's what we're going to talk about. But they're blowing up in the rock world, and not only the rock world, because as we know, man, rock hasn't been really in the mainstream since we were kids, and so now, like, it's kind of fallen off entirely. But this band, they're kind of bringing it back into the mainstream, and as we know, I'm a big fan of rock music, so it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: they sound. I just showed you not too long ago. They sound just like Led Zeppelin. I mean, it's almost like a carbon copy of Led Zeppelin, and I have mixed feelings about that. And for the longest time, I was hating on them, but I'm gonna break it down for you like this. So they were the only rock band to have a headlining time at Coachella. Okay. And Coachella is like super hipster.
Big.
And, well, yeah, super big too, of course. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that rock was represented at Coachella, but I hate the fact that it was this band. And then I started seeing these things that made me think otherwise, because these guys, and I didn't know this at the time, but these people in this band, if you haven't checked them out, definitely check them out, especially if you're a fan of Led Zeppelin. But they are like 20, 21, 22. They're mostly made up of brothers, and they are extremely talented. They sound like they've each been playing their instruments, guitar, drums, bass. They sound like they've been doing it for decades. They just have such a good feel for it and a vibe. And it's a kind of blues rock that hasn't been around for a long time, honestly, a long time. And so it's exciting for one extent, because while it may not be new, it may be recycled or a throwback to an extent. It's stirring up. People are talking about it. We're talking about it, And so the thing is, there was this review in Pitchfork magazine or publication, and I'm gonna pull this up real quick so I can read you the first line from this Pitchfork review. See, they already had songs out. Greta Van Fleet did, but it was like an EP, like a 6-song EP. So they just released their first full-length album. Okay. And Pitchfork did this review of the album, gave it a 1.6 rating. Okay. And
gosh,
this is what they said. Greta Van Fleet sound like they did weed exactly once, called the cops, and tried to record a Led Zeppelin album before they arrested themselves. That is how the review starts off, man. And so, basically I've seen other people say before that review came out and since what I just said about, maybe it's not ideal and maybe it's not this or that, but it's bringing actual musicianship back into the forefront of culture, like music culture right now. And it's doing it with fresh young faces that are truly talented at what they do. So it takes me to this, like we kind of mentioned earlier, always self-improvement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, you have to surround yourself with a group of people that builds you up and don't tear you down. Now they'll be real with you, just like you're real with me when I send you my music that I'm working on. You'll give me real honest advice. But at the same time, they're not going to tear you down and make you into something that you're not, or make you feel worse than you actually are, So my thing is this, if people truly want this type of music back in the mainstream, how can you specifically ask for that and then just tear people down anytime they try to give you that, because it's not what you had in your mind? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like a lot of times people have a hard time of understanding what constructive criticism is and just actual normal criticism.
I agree. Because there's one thing to be a critic, but not a hater, I don't think, I mean, and specifically in this case, you can't really say that line. You wouldn't read a line like that in the New York Times or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it kind of felt like they weren't trying to, they weren't putting their best foot forward. I mean, I feel like if I would listen to that review, I feel like I would instantly just start hating the band. And when you're doing reviews for a band, yeah, you can say you have dislikes, but you need to put it in a form, in a fashion, and say it in a way that it doesn't, like you said, tear down the band, but it actually at least gives people a good idea of what they might be listening to or whatever like that.
Yeah. Now, and let's say, and I'm using this whole thing as a metaphor for personal lives. So let's say that the band reads this review, right? And they say, oh man, well, we know that's crap. We know we're talented and we have dreams and aspirations beyond this. But because of that, they don't even bother to read the rest of the review. I didn't, but they don't bother to read any Pitchfork review in the future. And let's say there's some good constructive criticism in there that they can actually take and build upon for themselves. I can't say I don't know how many people in their situation actually pay attention to reviews like this, but let's just say for the sake of argument, they do. And then instead, because of this super negative review, they just don't pay attention to it. It's kind of like when you have someone who just bashes you, but maybe they have some good ideas for your trek through life, Well, are you going to listen to them? Honestly, I mean, if they've said such hateful things to you, you're not going to surround yourself with someone like that,
It's true.
So I think it's important. Like this is the importance of, if you're shooting for a life that's, you have large aspirations and want to accomplish big things, you can't really afford to surround yourself with people with that kind of negativity. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I do feel like it kind of comes in some ways. You want to surround yourself with people who are going to motivate you, but at the same time, you want to make sure that it's people who will, they'll actually do a good job of telling you, hey, what you just put out sucked.
Yeah.
You don't want to surround yourself with a bunch of yes men, because that doesn't help either.
No, you don't. You don't. And again, this goes with anything in life. We all have goals. We all have dreams, and you need to surround yourself with the right people. But those people, to me, need to be people that tell it to you straight. And, but at the same time, aren't going to break you down if you come at them with something that sucks. You've never done that to me. And I've sent you some stuff, some music stuff that sucks. Like, let's be honest. But you have never, as a true friend and as someone who wants to see the other succeed, just as I do for you, you come at me with, well, I wasn't really feeling that, or you should try this or try that. And so I'm talking about anything, whether you're talking about, owning a company, starting your own business, writing and producing an album, becoming a photographer. You need to surround yourself with people that make you better. And then block out the noise. Because I'll tell you, like, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, in regards to this podcast and trying to promote it and stuff, you can be left guessing, hey, are people just not seeing the posts? Are people, do they just not care? None of that should matter, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to your happiness and your drive. And you're going to have to find avenues to reach that level of success that you have envisioned. And I can't say that I know where we should go with this podcast 100%, but if we didn't have each other, I couldn't do this by myself. You couldn't do it by yourself. Like, it works because we have each other, and we both build each other up and look to create that success that we have envisioned.
So you want to make sure that you have friends, just like both of us, that will motivate you and push you to a higher level. Because I think making sure that you have people in your lives that do that actually pushes you even farther, like you said before, than what you could do by yourself.
Right.
Thinking that you can just, push through everything just by yourself, and thinking that, oh man, I can support myself, I don't need any help. Well, that's not true.
No,
we all need someone. We all need people who in our lives that will motivate us and help us, because you can't really get anywhere without people.
No.
As much as we hope and sometimes we think that we can, we can't. So we need to understand that surrounding yourself and making sure that there are people around you that will motivate you is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have those people there, you'll end up burning out really quickly.
Yes. It's all about the support system. And that, I just want to mention too, it's not just about finding success in life, but it's about happiness in life. You want to have the right support system around you to be happy, you know? And that's just about surrounding yourself with the right people. So I couldn't agree more. And you know, if we go back to the original Led Zeppelin, they too were skewered by critics and reviewers. And they were saying, hey, these guys are just a derivative of old blues artists, you know, Southern blues artists from America. And so, you know, they got railed too, but they had each other. Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, John Bonham. They're my favorite band in the world, you know. But they had each other. And that is the thing. They had each other to lean on, and they trusted each other's instincts. And when you're trying to make something of yourself and as we talked about at the very beginning, to go full circle, to find your footing in this world, you got to have people around you that you believe in, they believe in you, and you can trust each other's instincts. So, look, man, I'm just glad we got each other because I can definitely trust your instincts. I know,
for sure.
I know that's likewise for you, but man, so yeah, look, I think we hit some good topics today.
I think so too.
Yeah, we've been getting better every week, it feels like, you know, and we've been bouncing ideas off each other every single week, just like we're talking about. Hopefully you guys enjoy listening to this podcast and getting a little something out of it, maybe a little different perspective on some things and just some enjoyment. We try to keep it light around here, but we like to we like to talk about some heavier issues as well. So
exactly. I mean, we want to make sure that everyone has a topic that they can really think about. Because I mean that creates more conversations, and sometimes it puts those ideas in people's heads so that they can kind of start thinking about things a little bit more realistically and a little bit more intensely.
Yeah. I mean, and conversation is a perfect way to put it, which is why we're going to work on the Catch Up Facebook page. We will let you know when that goes live, and you guys can follow along on there, start conversation. We will post links to each and every episode on there, and then you can just go ahead and leave your comments and suggestions on those posts. In the meantime, remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff. One more time, thank you for listening, and this has been the Catch Up.
See you guys later.